Do you know the old cliche about never letting the details spoil a good headline? Well, that applies just as much to sports headlines. You've probably heard of these famous sports moments, but maybe you don't know the real story. Number 10. Bill Buckner's error. This clip is inevitably shown before every World Series game. 1986 World Series, Mets vs Red Sox, Game 6, bottom of the 10th. Bill Buckner allows a slow grounder to roll between his legs and the 68-year-long curse of the Bambino continues. Red Sox Nation's hearts are broken in the most excruciating way possible, except the game was tied at that point. Had he made the play, it would have merely prolonged the game. The improbable had already happened. The Red Sox scored 2 runs in the top of the 10th, giving them a 5-3 lead. They were just 3 outs away from winning the series, and after 2 quick flyouts, they were 1 out away with no one on base. Crews were decorating the Red Sox locker room with banners and champagne. Keith Hernandez, responsible for the second out of the inning, went to the Mets clubhouse to have a beer. And why not? The probability of a comeback was around 2%. But then things got crazy. 2 singles gave the Mets runners on first and second. Another single knocked in a run and put runners on the first and third. Red Sox manager John McNamara decided it was time for a pitching change and brought in reliable closer Bob Stanley to face Mookie Wilson. On the 8th pitch of the at-bat, Stanley threw a wild pitch, allowing the tying run to score and the other runner to move to second. On the next pitch, Wilson hit his slow grounder, which resulted in the infamous error. While the error is symbolic and certainly came at the worst possible time, it was merely the last in a series of improbable events. Bill Buckner took a lot of undeserved grief about this. Number 9. Miracle on Ice, February the 22nd, 1980, Lake Placid, New York. Everyone knows this one. The 1980 US men's hockey team defeated the Soviet Union 4-3 in an upset for the ages and won their first gold medal since 1960. Except, it wasn't the gold medal game. In 1980, like today, the teams in the tournament entered into pools where they would play a round robin. The top 2 teams from each pool advanced to the medal rounds, but unlike today where the medal round is a single elimination tournament, the top 2 from each pool would play the top 2 from the other pool in another round robin for the medals. It gets even weirder though. Those top teams would carry over their points earned against the other team from their pool who also advanced. The US and Sweden tied in a pool play, so they each brought in 1 point. The Soviets defeated Finland in pool play, so they brought in 2 points, while Finland brought in 0. So before a game in the medal round had even been played, the Soviet Union was leading the pack. By beating the Soviets, the US went up 3 points to 2, but the Soviets could still win the gold with a win over Sweden, who they beat 9-2, and the US lost to Finland. Even worse, a Soviet win and US tie against Finland would have resulted in the gold for the Soviets as well, since the goal differential was the first tiebreaker. But the US defeated Finland 4-2 after coming back from a 2-1 third period deficit, and we were spared having to go through such a ridiculous explanation as to why the US staged one of the biggest upsets in history but still finished behind the team they beat. Number 8. Bobby Thomson's shot heard around the world. Every baseball player's dream is to hit the big walk-off homer. In 1951, Bobby Thomson got that wish when he hit a dramatic 3-run homer off Brooklyn's Ralph Branca in the bottom of the 9th to win the National League pennant for the New York Giants. This was in the very early days of TV broadcasts, and the calls from the announcers are legendary. Except the Giants would go on to lose the World Series to the Yankees in 6 games. Just to add to it, Bobby Thomson hit an unimpressive .238 with no home runs. It would be like, well, the US defeating the Soviets and then losing to Finland. Number 7. Kerri Strug's vault. Everyone's seen the image. It's shown before every Olympic broadcast. Kerri Strug, one of the magnificent 7 members of the US women's gymnastics team at the 1996 Olympics, lands a beautiful vault on her injured and heavily wrapped ankle. It's the embodiment of the Olympic spirit. Just look at the pain on her face. Strug wasn't the star of the team. She wasn't expected to medal in any of the individual events, but then her team needed her. On her first attempt, she fell, but with the encouragement of her coach, Bella Caroli, she nailed her second attempt, and the US won gold for the first time ever. Kerri Strug was vaulted into superstardom and Olympic immortality for coming up big when it mattered the most. Except the team had already secured the gold medal before she landed the vault. Kerri almost certainly wasn't aware of that, nor was it likely any of her teammates knew. At the time, there was a very complex scoring system, and the scores of the eventual silver medalists, Russia, were being tabulated more or less simultaneously. So while it was an awesome moment, Strug could have fallen flat on her face and the result Well, it would have been the same. One scary theory is the debate over whether or not the American coaches knew they had already won. There's a rumor that Bella Caroli, who did not coach Strug individually but did coach teammate Dominique Monseo, sent her out there just to fail so she would be eliminated from individual competition. Think about that the next time you see the other iconic image of him saying, "You can do it," and promptly carrying her out for the medal ceremony. Number 6. Michael Jordan's shot. You've seen it in Nike and Gatorade ads. The NBA used it in their promos forever. With 2 seconds remaining and his team down by 1, Michael Jordan takes the inbound pass, dribbles quickly towards the foul line, jumps high in the air, buries the jumper, and pumps his fist in celebration. It's the defining moment of the career of a man who nailed numerous clutch shots while winning 6 NBA titles. Except this only clinched a first-round win 2 years before his first title. It was 1989. The Bulls were the 6th seed and were tied with the 3rd-seeded Cavaliers 2-2 going into the final game in Cleveland. When Jordan hit the game winner, it was just another sad chapter in the infamous Cleveland curse. The Bulls would defeat the New York Knicks in the second round before falling to the Detroit Pistons 4-2. More impressively, those were the only 2 games the Pistons lost in the playoffs on their way back to their first of back-to-back titles. It's cool to watch, and it was a sign of things to come, but it was far from Jordan's greatest moment. Number 5. Billie Jean King versus Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes. In 1973, women's tennis legend Billie Jean King defeated men's tennis legend Bobby Riggs in front of 30,000 spectators and an estimated 90 million television viewers in what has become known as the Battle of the Sexes. It was a triumph for the women's liberation movement, proof that a top female athlete could compete against a top male athlete on equal ground. Except Bobby Riggs was 55 at the time. And I'll ask you now, can you name a great athlete, a tennis player, who's 55 years old? Exactly. He was way past his prime. The oldest winner of a Grand Slam title was 37. The average winner is in their early 20s. Even golf's oldest major winner was 48. Not to mention that Bobby Riggs was far from one of the greatest of all time. He won an impressive 3 Grand Slam titles, but there are over 30 men who've won more than 3, and his most recent was in 1941 when he was 23 years old. Billie Jean King is one of the greatest athletes of all time, and her win was an important symbol for the era's feminist movement. However, it would have been much more impressive if it came out against one of the top players of 1973, not 1943. Number 4. Scott Norwood. 1991, Super Bowl 25, 8 seconds left. Scott Norwood, place kicker for the heavily favored Buffalo Bills, attempts the game-winning field goal but misses wide right. The New York Giants win 2019 in the closest Super Bowl ever. Had Norwood not blown it, the Bills would have won 22-20. Except it was a 47-yard attempt, not exactly a chip shot. During the 1990 season, NFL place kickers as a whole were successful only 62% of the time between 40 and 49 yards. Notwithstanding the enormous pressure he was under, the kick was on the back end of the 40 to 49 range. By comparison, the success rate from over 50 yards in 1990 was 42%, so he was pretty much in the 50-50 range. Also, the game was played on a grass field, not on the AstroTurf that the Bills played on at home and which favored kickers. And remember that the Bills were heavily favored, yet were trailing by 1 in the waning moments of the game. It certainly came down to much more than 1 missed long field goal attempt. Number 3. Bob Beamon's long jump. At the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City, Bob Beamon shattered the world long jump record by over 2 feet, winning the gold medal in style. It was the culmination of one of the most dominant stretches ever for a track and field athlete, as it won 22 of the previous 23 events that it entered. His record would stand for 23 years, which is an eon for track and field. Except the 1968 Olympics were held in Mexico City, a city with an elevation of 7,000 feet. Anyone who's been to such an elevation knows that the thin air can make breathing difficult at times, but it also means a lot less resistance. Is it any wonder the longest field goal in NFL history was in Denver, or that Denver's Coors Field is built with such enormous dimensions to prevent constant home runs? If you go play golf at those dimensions, it'll do wonders for your ego. And guess what? You can also jump a lot further. We don't want to take anything away from Beamon. He dominated the competition all over the world all year. He beat the silver medalist who had the exact same altitude advantage by almost 2.5 feet. That's the equivalent of winning a football game by 35 points. Well, if you're not North American, that's the equivalent of winning a football match by 6 goals. The gold medal was certainly impressive, but it's reasonable to say that the world record would likely have been broken after just a few years instead of a few decades had it been elsewhere. Number 2. Steve Bartman. In 2003, the Chicago Cubs held a 3-2 series lead against the Florida Marlins for the National League Championship. One of the Cubs' 2 superstar pitchers, Mark Pryor, was on the mound as the Cubs led 3-0 in the 8th. The Cubs were just 5 outs away from going to their first World Series in 58 years and an opportunity to win their first World Series in 95 years. But then Luis Castillo hit a fly ball towards the left field foul line. It was drifting towards the stands, but Moises Alou had a shot at it. He leapt into the air and reached for the ball, but fate intervened in the form of a fan named Steve Bartman, who also reached for the ball and interfered with Alou's attempt. The Cubs would go on to lose the game. The next night, they would lose again and fall short of the World Series. Had it not been for one overzealous fan, lifetimes of frustration for countless other fans would have been over. Except the Cubs would go on to give up 8 runs that inning. Had Alou made the catch, it would have been the second out with only 1 runner on. Instead, Castillo walked and the next batter singled in a run. But that was just the start. The most notorious moment came next when Miguel Cabrera hit an easy ground ball to short, a classic double play ball that should have ended the inning. The usually sure-handed shortstop Alex Gonzalez misplayed the ball and both runners were safe. After that, the floodgates opened and the Marlins took an 8-3 lead that they would not relinquish. And then the Cubs went out and blew a 5-3 lead in Game 7 the next night, eventually losing 9-6. 11 years later, Cubs fans are still waiting for a chance to come so close again. Certainly, Steve Bartman's interference hurt matters, and it's symbolic of the debacle. But there were many other preventable aspects that mean everyone should just leave the poor guy alone. Number 1. Miracle on Ice Part 2. The Miracle on Ice really was an upset for the ages, right up there with the Giants upsetting the Patriots in the Super Bowl and Villanova upsetting Georgetown in the 1985 National Championship game. Except those were pros beating pros or amateurs beating amateurs. While the 1980 Olympics were technically an amateur event, the communist definition of amateur wasn't exactly the same as that of the capitalist definition. The Soviet players did nothing but play hockey. Many were technically in the army or had some other job title for the state, but realistically they were spending all of their time playing hockey in state-of-the-art facilities. Meanwhile, the top American players were all playing in the NHL, and since they were being paid to play, they were not eligible to compete in the Olympics. The American team was made up of top college players, and a team of college all-stars has a shot against a team of professional all-stars, right? Except hockey has a rather extensive minor league system, so while the best American players were in the NHL, dozens, if not hundreds of other top Americans were playing for minor league teams all over North America, which of course made them ineligible as pros as well. So the top several hundred American players weren't eligible, while the broad definition of amateur allowed the top players from the hockey-mad Soviet Union to compete. Fast forward to 2014, where pros played pros in the Olympics and the US had to go to a shootout to beat the Russians. No wonder it's arguably the highest profile upset of all time. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up below, and do not forget to subscribe. Brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also check out my other channel, Today I Found Out, linking to that on the screen now. And as always, thank you for watching.